Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I am your host Nick, and I thought I'd start this episode off, before the little teaser, just a quick kind of tangential soccer story about my visit to the orthopedic doctor today, because man, my knee has been bothering me for the last month or so. I don't know if it's just because I'm getting old. I don't know if having 3 kids is taking its toll on me, or a lifetime of playing and coaching soccer has finally caught up. But I get checked out, doesn't seem to be any sort of bad damage, no tears, get the MRIs. We go over the MRI results and the doctor says, Nick, you have what's known as a lateral discoid meniscus. Typically a meniscus is like a crescent shape to kind of cushion between the bones in the knee. Yours is more of an oval, it's more disc shaped, hence calling it a discoid meniscus. And typically people who live active and athletic lives and have discoid meniscus will tear them. They are much more easily torn than a normal meniscus. And the doctor looks at me and goes, so I don't know if you're just very lucky or if you were really bad at soccer. That's how he broke the news to me, that everything in my knee was fine. So I just got to do a lot of home exercises and strengthen it back up, and I should be feeling better. But yeah, what a way to break the news to somebody, huh? Anyway, later on in the show, we're going to recap and preview the Fire's latest matches. And from an email from Ryan, I'll give you my ideal lineup. And also, it's the feast day of the Annunciation. It is Greek Independence Day, which is very, very big deal for me and my family. Hence the Greek jersey here. And we're going to end the show with a little prayer. Something that I wrote, the Major League Soccer Lord's Prayer. So stay tuned. Welcome back once again, soccer fans, to the Feed the Fire podcast. Thank you for tuning in again this week as our listenership and viewership continues to grow. I really appreciate it. I'm your host, Nick. We're going to get into a recap of the Chicago Fire's 1-1 draw against New England. We're going to preview their upcoming match at Atlanta. Yikes, and that's a tough place to play against a tough team. And we're going to have a little fun along the way and wrap up with my very own appeal to the gods of soccer, the MLS Lord's Prayer. So I want to thank you again for listening, for tuning in. Please make sure you're sharing the show. It's great that you're liking, subscribing, leaving 5-star reviews. Thank you so much. Please share the show, send a link out, tell a friend, all that great grassroots stuff that really helps the game grow and the conversation around the game grow. Before we get into a lot of our Chicago Fire talk, I want to thank Ryan for his email, and I'd like to read a little bit of it to everyone here because it really kind of got me thinking about what I would like to see out of this Chicago Fire team. As he begins his email saying, I'm glad I came back and gave you a second listen, Nick. You were really negative to start the season, and I was looking for something a little more hopeful. So, Ryan, thank you for giving me a second chance. I really do appreciate that, and I think that's just good kind of advice for anyone out there who is finding new social media entertainment, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube channel, some sort of influencer on TikTok or Instagram. If you like the topic and you like the subject matter, don't judge them by the very first and only thing you're ever going to look at. Go back and check them out and see what kind of presence they've built and what kind of maybe network and who else they're bringing on their show and what things they're tweaking. So yeah, keep it up. And Ryan, so thanks for coming back. But what he said that really kind of caught my attention from a content perspective here, he says, I've joined the Fire Frank bandwagon. If the Fire had a different head coach, I think there was enough talent to win that game versus the Revs. What would be your dream lineup with the current players on this team? Assuming healthy, because if Turan and Gutman were full goes, I think the season would be a couple points different. His lineup is a 3-5-2, 3-man backline with Gutman, Turan, and Chihos. Brady starting in net. Defensive midfielders Acosta and Aragoni, and attacking midfielders here, Herbers, Gutierrez, and Haile Selassie. Sorry for the pause, just the way my email formatted how he broke it down, just kind of scrambled some of the letters. And then his attacking players, Shaqiri and Cuypers. So an interesting lineup. I am going to disagree with you on 2 points. I'm going to disagree with the 3-man backline. I haven't seen Frank be able to coach this three-man backline, and I don't know if Gutman is qualified to play as a center back. Maybe if you kind of flip Gutman and Aragoni a little bit, and you kind of send Gutman a little more forward, it has the possibility to work. But the three-man backline doesn't typically work. But I like where you're thinking, because I like how you want to get some more wing players involved in Gutman and Herbers and Haile Selassie. And I like that you're getting our best players out there, Acosta, Aragoni. So I also am intrigued by kind of a two-man front with Shaqiri and Cuypers. Hopefully Shaqiri can kind of be a link-up between the attacking midfielders and the striker, instead of just being a midfield link-up between the defense and the forwards like we've seen him try to do and end up just lobbing balls. So I really like where your head's at, Ryan. I think I would disagree on some of the players, though, as well. I think my ideal would be a four-man back line with Turan and Chihos starting, with Aragoni and Gutman, and then having Gutman be able to play forward. We've seen Aragoni able to go forward a little bit more, and he's able to get into the offense. We didn't know that was really part of his game, and that really wasn't anything he'd been asked of, but we saw how well he took that shot. I think it was in this last New England game. He lined it up and teed it up perfectly. Keeper was in the right position and made a good save, but he can get forward. So if those guys are going to move up a little bit, and if Gutman's going to get more involved in the attack, I think that four-man backline would be good with Chihos and Turan as our center backs, and then you can obviously work in Salquist, rotate them as needed, keep those center backs fresh. It's a long MLS season. So that would be my starting backline. Obviously Brady in goal, I think that goes without saying. And I think I remember, was it Schmetzer a couple of years back did an interview kind of talking about the pulley system with your outside backs, where if Gutman's going to go up and go forward, then that's going to bring Aragoni back and vice versa. That way you keep that balance, and you keep at least your two center backs and a third defender in a good defensive position. I don't think the Fire are good enough to defend counterattacking soccer, so that's why you need to have that kind of pulley system with your outside backs. Looks like I'm milking a cow here on the video as I'm going up and down with my hands, but I think that it would be something the Fire would want to employ. As far as your defensive midfielders, I would like to see Acosta and Mauricio Pineda. I think Pineda has played extremely well as a center back, the way he's been asked to do it, and he kind of came into this league as a center back. Shoot, I remember giving a hot take, what was it, 2-3 years ago, saying that he should be in like a finalist for center back of the year or something like that, defender of the year, the way his game had been developing to that point. But I think he is valuable as a very good defensive midfielder, a very good defensive midfielder, because he's excellent with his passing and distribution. I think he would pair up well with Acosta, who can kind of control the game on the ball, and Pineda can control the game by shutting down opposing counterattacks and distributing. As far as my attacking three, I would like to see Gutierrez centrally as that more traditional number 10. And a lot of people are starting to say that traditional number 10s are a thing of the past, and you're not really seeing them in MLS, and you've got to play up the wings, especially with some big physical center backs and defensive mids. It's going to be harder and harder for that kind of point guard style traditional number 10 in the middle of the field. But I think that's who Gutierrez is, and I think that's how he's come up in the Fire system. So I would want to see him centrally. I would like to see Mueller on one wing. I would like to see Shaqiri out on the other wing. And I almost wanted to say Haile Selassie, but again, at this point, Shaqiri still is a very good passer of the ball. If he could just stop launching long balls and maybe have some link-up play with Gutierrez, with Cuypers, with whoever's playing on that side of the field with him, I think that would be ideal. But if he's not going to stop it, then I would have no hesitancy to start Selassie over him with Cuypers up top. And Cuypers is a guy who needs service, and so we would need to be a very attack-minded team and put the pressure on the opposing team. The moment we start seeing subs like we did in that New England game of Barlow coming in, of Turan coming in, we knew that Frank was satisfied with the road point. And typically that's fine, but against a struggling New England team and in a sloppy, rainy match, go for the 3 points. You had your opportunities, and you should have kept pushing. So that's kind of how I would play my starting 11, my ideal 11. And for anyone else out there, let me know what you think. Email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or you can find me on Twitter at glasshousesoccer and other social media at glasshousesoccer, and send me a message there. I also like how Ryan concludes his email with the offseason. I think Heights earned to make it one more year. I agree with you on that one. He's definitely improved. He admitted his mistakes, and he has started correcting them. And Mansueto came out and admitted that mistakes were made, and that it's going to be a while to turn these things around. And Ryan even gets into that, and he says, "I think while the coaching situation does fall on him, Heights cannot erase the fire from the past 12 years out of potential head coaches' minds." So I like how you're getting into the fact that it's going to be hard to recruit other coaches to want to come to the Chicago Fire. People had the pipe dream of Jesse Marsh at one point, but he was looking for bigger projects, I believe, or at least one where he wasn't so hamstrung. But maybe, and this is what I was kind of speculating feels like way back when they announced Klopas would be the official manager of the Fire, that it should be a short-term deal or a 1 year with some sort of clause that says they can move him into an assistant role or another role if they bring in another coach. Maybe kind of something they did to CJ Brown, right? Where they can say, hey, look what we've had these caretaker coaching staff do with this talent that our GM has brought in. Finally, is there another head coach out there who wants to come and give it a go? So I like what you're saying there. And Ryan concludes his email, maybe with the current talent on the team and an owner who cares, I think he does, that will prove that this isn't a sinking ship or a head coach's last resort. Keep up the podcast. Love to listen to it, Ryan. Ryan, all excellent points. I hope I kind of gave you a little bit of what you were looking for there and kind of let you know what I was thinking, and maybe some positivity here. We'll see how Klopas wants to treat an away match in Mercedes-Benz Stadium at Atlanta United this upcoming weekend, if he decides to tweak his lineup at all. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let's get back to that New England game. That was just a mess of a game with all the rain that was going on in the East Coast and that had been pouring down in Gillette Stadium here. It was a sloppy game, and I tweeted it out. I usually give my halftime thoughts and my full-time thoughts on Twitter when I watch a game. I try not to tweet too much because I want to actually, enjoy it and watch the match and see what's going on. And I also don't want to be the worst example to my kids of being that dad who is on his phone while also having the TV on and not explaining to them what's going on. So it was a sloppy game, and I tweeted out at the end of the match. It's hard to really evaluate a game where the weather impacted so much of it, and to a certain extent the officiating as well. Completely separate topic, right? How bad the officiating has been. Oh my goodness. At the beginning of the season, I said with replacement referees, I hope they at least aren't ignoring player safety, and I hope that they're not costing teams points. They're going to blow calls. Even the best referees miss calls. Even good officiating crews aren't going to get it right with or without VAR on occasion. There's going to be some questionable yellow cards, but what we saw this weekend was miscall after miscall, terrible yellow and red cards throughout the league. I'm not just talking about New England and Chicago. PKs that weren't, PKs that should have been, or ones that were given that shouldn't have. All these sort of things. And it really has come to kind of make you question where these teams are going to end up in the standings. I guess the only thing to say to that is, well, all the teams had to deal with terrible refs of enough of a sample size where, we're 5-6 weeks into the season here, and everyone has been robbed to some degree because of the officiating. So I'll say that, and we'll put that to bed because we're not going to solve it talking here on Feed the Fire. At least not right. No. Never mind. We're not going to solve it tonight. But what we can solve is kind of break down a little bit of what happened. We saw the Chicago Fire have an excellent start to this match. Hugo Cuypers gets the goal in the 20th minute. Excellent work by him to get open. Great ball movement by the Fire. I said they were very pragmatic. They played a very structurally sound first 20-30 minutes or so of that match. They picked their moments to go forward, which, the weather, you kind of have to do that, but when you're the away team and when you do have that conservative mindset on the road, like Klopas has, like he's kind of instilled in the team these last couple of seasons, that I wasn't expecting them to, come out, soccer balls to the walls kind of approach here, but they were very pragmatic. They were much more organized, and it looked like they actually had a little bit of a plan, so I'll give them that. But I got to tell you, there were a lot of other fans out there who I was interacting with on social media during the course of this game who, when that ball got played into Cuypers, we know the quality of striker Cuypers is. We've seen his highlights. We've seen what he can do on the training pitch, some of the near misses he's had with the Fire so far. Any other club would be like, yeah, this is in the back of the net. But because we're Chicago Fire fans, even though he's taking that shot from about 7 yards out or 10 yards out, we're still holding our breath, sitting at the edge of our seat, sweating, clenched fists, like, oh my gosh, is it going to go in or is he going to sky it? And he did shoot high, and it was a really clever shot because you saw the New England keeper sprawling out, thinking, most strikers are going to try to play it to either side of them as the ball is coming in. But Cuypers goes for the roof of the net, hits it, goal. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Chicago takes the 1-0 lead, but then due to the additional stoppage time of the first half, Nacho Gil evens it up in the 45th +4. You can say that the Fire were trying to delay the game a little bit, and that's why they got some extra time, whatever the case may be. I do think the league and FIFA in general need to take a look around soccer and say, hey, look, we got to figure out what we're doing with stoppage time. I understand the reasoning why in the Qatar World Cup they started adding all that extra stoppage time to it. And I hate to say it because you are kind of fundamentally changing the game. I usually don't mind a lot of rule changes across sports as long as you're not kind of fundamentally changing the game. You're starting to see that in the NFL a little bit. You're starting to see that in the NBA, NFL with how you can tackle and how you can actually play defense. That's changing the way the game is played. In the NBA, the way you can, how many steps you can take, carries, all this sort of thing. The speed of the game is affecting the officiating, which is affecting the actual substance of the game. So the statistics have impacted the game where it's either a dunk or a 3-point shot, right? So that's kind of changing the game in that sense. And I think the way FIFA is going to take it, instead of just saying, wow, that was a bad idea to start adding 9 to 12 minutes of stoppage time every time, go back to, fine, we'll just do like 3 minutes, right? Whatever, a minute, 30 seconds to a minute per sub, this and that sort of thing. I think they're going to just say, we need to start stopping the clock. Whenever the ball goes out of bounds, just stop the clock. Whenever it's dead, just stop the clock. I think that's where this is. They're going to start trying that out in some of the lower leagues. Wouldn't surprise me if you see it in MLS Next. Is that it, or is it just MLS Pro? MLS, not MLS Next Pro, but the lower division from that. If you start to see it being tried in there by MLS, and then thereby MLS trying to get ahead of the curve and influence FIFA, as we have seen in other cases with VAR, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if that is where this conversation goes. Just go back to the way it was. No one was complaining about, if there was 2 to 4 minutes of stoppage time every game. Now it's like, well, are you going to give me 20 minutes or are you going to give me 6 minutes? We don't know. Okay, another tangent there. Let's get back to this New England-Chicago game. And then the second half was just two teams not wanting to be there. There was not a lot of urgency from either team, I don't think, to really push for those 3 points. They were very, very particular in the moments that they pushed forward. So let's take a quick look here at the statistics as we do. Chicago ended up with 38% possession, 9 shots, 2 on goal. Defense stepped up with 3 block shots. As far as the passing goes, only 338 total passes for the Fire, 76% passing accuracy. So they were playing a bit of a counter-attacking style, not having accurate, or I should say, high accuracy passes, knocking the ball around the back. They were pushing forward when they had the opportunity to do so. Only 3 corner kicks, 4 total crosses, 2 offside. So not getting into those corners, looking for Cuypers more and more rather than playing up the wings. Does that show an evolution of Chicago Fire, trying to change up some of their tactics and what they've been trying to do over the last couple of years? I'm not there yet. I think it's just a product of the fact you have a striker who plays centrally, even though at times he was dropping pretty deep this game, just to try and come back and get on the ball and get some touches maybe. But I don't think we're at the point where we can say that the coaching staff is trying to change up their tactics. Honestly, I think it was a product of Shaqiri not being in the lineup. that they're able to play more directly to Cuypers instead of just bombing balls forward or bombing balls down into the corners, into those channels, as they say. So keep an eye when Shaqiri comes back to see if where Cuypers is receiving the ball, if those crossing numbers skyrocket, if those corner kick numbers increase as well. Here's an area of concern, at least in this game, and maybe it was the weather. Aerial duels won. Chicago was out aerial dueled by New England 16-6. XG also 0.9 XG. Firekeeper had 3 saves. Defense had 10 clearances, 12 fouls, 4 yellow cards apiece. So at least it was even in that sense. If you want to look at the passing intervals, it'll come as no surprise to you, or I should say the possession intervals, that New England controlled the vast majority of this game. And looking at the advanced statistics, again, 2.2 expected goals for New England and a 0.9 XG for the Chicago Fire. So that is your statistical comparison. It's hard to really say how much this will pass the eye test of the game, that the statistics matched up to what we saw. I think from the Chicago Fire side of things it did, but I think the statistics almost overinflated how good a performance it was for the New England Revolution. Is that the right way to say it? That if you just looked at the stats, you'd think, wow, they did pretty well, they just didn't convert their chances. Or, the Fire had that great counterattack. That was it. No, I think the weather slowed them down. I think that you saw the midfield not able to run at the speed they wanted to, and it really did just kind of be a slow, plodding game. So that's my thoughts on the Chicago Fire New England. Now let me flip it over to our featured guest and good friend of the show, John Donovan, to get all of his takes on what went on in this latest Chicago Fire game. John, take it away.
Nick, John Donovan here, ready to talk about the Chicago Fire and the MLS. Nick, we had a game Saturday afternoon at Gillette Stadium in outside of Boston, and in my opinion, it wasn't a very good game. It was a traditionally poor placement game for Klopas. He just never seems to do what's the obvious. But the game ended up 1-1. And it wasn't a very exciting game. There was a lot of really good football on Saturday night, especially the Kansas City-LA game. That was just super. But we had a few changes in the starting lineup. As you know, our Swiss DP player is back in Switzerland playing for the Swiss team, which is fine for the Fire. But knowing Klopas, he, rather than just put Gutierrez in the middle and let Herbers play off to the side, he did the opposite. And, I don't know when he's going to understand that you've got to let players play in a position that they're strong, that their strengths are at. Herbers can play all over the place. He's a jack of all trades, a great player in nothing, but a very dependable player. I will go with that. But the starting lineup was Selassie, Herbers off to the left, Acosta, Jimenez, Dean, which I really like. I like to see him out there. Sijos, Jimenez, and Aragoni. And then they had Solquist in the middle with Sijos. And I just don't get this Solquist guy. He's a guy that seems to fall asleep on the field. I mean, I saw him again in this game of people getting beyond him. And it just, you've got Pineda, you've got Olmsberg on who wasn't even traveling with the team this year. Klopas just doesn't seem to get that it's not just the skill of the game, it's the smarts of the game. And Olmsberg really had the smarts going 2 years ago, but I just think that when they make these major trades, like for Solquist, there must be some pressure on Klopas to play him. He's lost one game, and they barely got out with a tie of another game. And honestly, I thought he lost this game. But that's the Klopas and the unreliability of his management. I mean, normally you get a couple of wins someplace in this season, and then they will go on a tremendous slide. And then at the end of the season, they'll get a couple of more wins. But, the two players that I'm really impressed with that are on the Fire, that weren't on the Fire last year, is Cuypers. I mean, he reminds me of a player that I played with named Flaco Bryce, who became the center forward for Peru in a World Cup match in, I think, 72 or 74. But just an excellent player that's around the goal. That's what Cuypers does. He's around the goal. He's always breaking for the goal. If he doesn't have 15, 20 goals by the end of the season, I will be shocked. He seems to be getting into a rhythm. Unfortunately, Selassie doesn't seem to be able to feed him that well. The cross, the beautiful cross that he got this time was from Herbers breaking down the right side. So, I look at this lineup and you've got this wonderful center forward in the middle, but you've got a winger in Gutierrez that doesn't play wing well. And you've got Selassie on the right side who does a decent job. At least he gets back. But, your best winger is Mueller. And he's sitting on the bench and didn't get in the game again. Now, you've got a striker up there that can score as long as he has service, but we are not, other than the one time from Herbers, there was really no service. The midfield, Acosta makes a big difference from just Jimenez out there. I was trying to focus a little bit on Jimenez's play, but he doesn't seem to keep up with the action that well. He's a walker. I hope this is the last season for him. I'd much rather see some of these young local guys get out there rather than Jimenez. There's no future in that. You got to have some future. I was so impressed with Carlos Gil. He is a real natural center forward that keeps himself involved in the game. His brother is all right. He scored the goal, but Carlos Gil, every time he gets the ball, there's a possibility of a score. He's a better dribbler than Acosta of Cincinnati, but Acosta of Cincinnati really can shoot the ball. Hill is a different player, but man, very valuable for the squad. I was watching that New England play, and we're used to them having strong forwards, but they had this guy Veroni up top that literally couldn't run very quick, wasn't on the ball, had a lot of opportunities. The New England team is without a scorer up front. They have Jones in the back. I like Farrell. I've always liked Farrell. I don't think Polster is such a good player. It doesn't seem to have the basic skills of the game. He doesn't trap too well. He's a rough guy. He stays up with the ball. He's in good condition, but his skill level is not up to, say, other halfbacks in the league. The backside for the Fire today, again, Sahlquist, he just makes me really nervous. If I was the coach, I don't know what I would do. He just seems to fall asleep on the field. But Dean played, and I thought he played a strong game. They subbed him off about 60 minutes in and put the new left wing in, Gaspar. Probably getting that name wrong, but he went off with the same kind of pull that a lot of these guys get, these hamstring pulls early on, which is always a 5 to 6 week rehab. It's sad that happens, but that's part of the game. I had a real bad tear once. The stadium was empty, and I was wondering why. I know New England is not doing well. They don't have a point. Well, they have a point now. But it was empty, and the weather was really nasty. It was a Boston or Chicago type weather, wet, wind, rain, not comfortable at all, not a comfortable scene. I'm a big fan of the coach of New England. Caleb Porter is, he's won the MLS twice. He was a incredibly famous coach from Akron with the Zips. I don't know how many times he won the NCAA, but he goes hot with Columbus, with Portland, and then he goes cold. So he's an American coach. He's a good coach. I'm sure that he'll rebound from this New England thing. All he needs is a center forward, especially with Carlos Gil. So thank you very much, Nick. Mike, I hope to see you. Oh, the players of the game for the Fire obviously was Cuypers and Acosta. The probably the worst player in the field was Sahlquist. So that's it. Have a good day, guys.
John, thanks again for always contributing to the show, and we appreciate all the support you give. Speaking of support, John Donovan segment is brought to you by our sponsor, Skyra, Icelandic spring water. Icelandic for clear, Skyra comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. And Skyra Icelandic spring water is available at your local 7-Eleven. Make sure you go out and grab a few bottles. Always have one in the car with you. Always have one in your training bag. Always have one around the house. You need to have at least 3 bottles on you at all time. That's my personal recommendation. But they are sponsoring me. But I believe that you've got to stay hydrated. Why not do it with Skyra? All right. Now transitioning to our upcoming match, the Chicago Fire's upcoming match. Not my upcoming match. I ain't playing. You heard I got a discoid meniscus here. I'm not playing. But the Fire's upcoming match against Atlanta United. First of a couple games. They're playing Atlanta United in a few weeks coming up, which I always say it at least once a season on the show here. I don't like the imbalanced schedule of MLS, and by imbalanced I mean you could play the same team within, a 3 to 5 week period, and other teams you'll play like the first week and the last week, and it's just seems to be a little out of whack. I think there's got to be a better way for the league to balance it. Maybe once they get some better TV broadcasting schedules going on, and which you started to see, some 1 o'clock games, some 3:30 games, some 6:30, 7:30 games like that. Maybe that'll fall into place. But just a hope of mine. I always compare it to the German Bundesliga, where they play the same schedule the first half as the second half. So if you play a team week 1, then that'll be your team, week 19, if that's the start of the second half of the season. You run through your teams and then you run through them again. So it's kind of a little more even and balanced. And I think those people who value the supporter shield might also agree with me on that. Now, getting back to Atlanta United, the Five Stripes, they come in sitting in 8th place so far with 6 points after 4 games. So they have 2 wins, 2 losses, 0 draws, 6 goals for, 4 goals against. They are 2-0 at home and 0-2 on the road. So they are definitely that home team, right? That's a big advantage for them playing in the Benz. So the Fire already have their work cut out for them traveling to Atlanta United. Now let's take a look at the players. Now usually I go back to the last game and look at that lineup and kind of break it down from there, but their last game was a 2-0 loss in Toronto, and they were missing a few guys for international duty, which I totally forgot, and definitely had Giakoumakis starting in my fantasy team, and I don't think I've had a full fantasy lineup because I keep forgetting to update it the day before all games. But anyway, that's neither here or there. That's why I don't play fantasy for money. Absolutely. I may be the worst fantasy MLS player out there just because I don't manage my roster. Anyway, that's something else we can talk about on another show. Maybe we do a whole new podcast on my terrible MLS fantasy picks. We could probably fill a show with it. But going back to their prior game, a 2-0 victory against Orlando City, we saw goals from Giakoumakis and Ljubijanidze in that game. So their star players still doing it. Their starting lineup going from back to front: Bradguzan in goal, Caleb Wiley, Williams, Gregerson, Lennon are your defenders there. Your midfielder, Sliss, Mavumba, and then your attacking midfielders, Zande Silva, Almada, and Ljubijanidze, and Giakoumakis up front. I butchered those names. I know it. Go to MLSsoccer.com and look up the roster. But I'm telling you enough for you to get through this next match for the Chicago Fire here, right? So that is how they line up. A 4-2-3-1, a familiar formation for the Chicago Fire. But looking at the bench, the names that kind of jump out: Dax McCarty, solid defensive midfield type of substitution. Tyler Wolf, again, a midfield substitution that can also provide a little bit of offense as well. So they've got some game changers on the bench, and you're not going to see a huge drop-off in talent when they bring in guys like Fortune, like Mascara, like Hernandez, like Firmino. There's not going to be a huge drop-off, but obviously the names to know: Thiago Almada and Yorgos Giakoumakis. Giakoumakis, by the way, coming off of Greece's Euro qualifying with a goal against Kazakhstan, if I recall correctly. So, Greece won that game 5-0. I'm gonna, chalk it up to a little Greek Independence Day magic, a little Annunciation miracle there. Rolling Kazakhstan 5-0. They've got Georgia coming up later this week, depending on when you're listening to the show, if they haven't already played. And then they get into some other European games. So hopefully Giakoumakis isn't missing too many games from the sake of an Atlanta perspective. Also, you got to keep an eye on Caleb Wiley, a young, up-and-coming American star. I think he's out on international duty, come to think of it. So, playing with the Olympic team. So we'll have to check that out and see. I forget exactly our Olympic team lineup. I do know that Chris Brady is with them and will likely be out and probably be out for this weekend's game. Olympic team drawing their first game 2-2 to France. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at if Almada and Giakoumakis are back and play a full 90, they're going to attack. They're going to push the tempo. They're going to get Giakoumakis his looks. He's most dangerous inside the box because he can score. You saw it in that Orlando game. He can score with his left foot. He can score with his right foot. He can score, or not the Orlando game, the previous game when he had his hat trick. He scored a goal with his head, his left foot, and his right foot. Right foot, albeit coming from the PK spot, but he still got to convert. So the guy can score from any body part at any point in the box, and he's not afraid to let fly if he's got space from outside about 18, 20 yards either. We all know Almada's dangerous on free kicks. Some of the questions surround Brad Guzan. Brad Guzan? I see, I'm like getting all sort of ethnic pronunciation-wise here. Brad Guzan from America is the goalkeeper. There's been a lot of questions around him if he should continue to be starting for Atlanta United, if he's still got it, if he's lost a step, if he's lost a little of his vision on things. So we'll see. But those are the Atlanta United players to kind of keep a lookout for, right? Those are the guys who can beat you. Those are the guys who could stop you. Now, Atlanta, we know, has a high-powered offense, and under Gonzalo Pineda, they're a very well-coached team. So we'll see if they continue to bring that against the Fire. I expect a quick start to this game. I expect a very, very fast game. Unless Chicago really wants to slow things down and employ a similar strategy like they did against New England, play defensively, play pragmatically. But I think a quick game, yes, it benefits Atlanta, but it also benefits Chicago because Atlanta, not known for their defense, right? Last season they were winning games in shootouts, right? 4-3, 3-2 kind of a deal. So I would expect, on one hand, it worked last week against New England, so don't be surprised if the Fire sit back and are pragmatic. But on the other hand, they could probably push the tempo against Atlanta, and if they can start peppering the goal a little bit, cause Guzan some trouble, maybe they get one off of a gaff on his part, and they can really kind of build some momentum and take control of that game. So I'm not going to pick a win. I don't think the Chicago Fire get a win. At best, this is a draw scenario for them. Another 2-2, maybe 3-3 draw, though it wouldn't shock me if they end up dropping this game, 3-1 with another Cuypers goal in this one. But hey, when was the last time Almada and Giakoumakis came up against Callan-Acosta? We shall see. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in this matchup against Atlanta. What's the tempo going to be like? Can the Fire match Atlanta, or can they slow down Atlanta? And if they do that, they give themselves a little bit of an opportunity there to come back with some points. Now, of course, it's a difficult task. The Fire need all the help they can get, which is why I have written the MLS Lord's Prayer. And this is something I wrote a while back. I shared it on a prior YouTube channel podcast, but I don't know how much exposure it really got. But I think it's appropriate now. Again, today, the feast day of the Annunciation, when the Virgin Mary was told that she would have the baby, because we're 9 months from Christmas, right? 9 months out. It's when we celebrate it. But also Greek Independence Day. And gosh, I would love to see Koutsias get a start up top in a dual striker role with Cuypers. That would be phenomenal the week following Greek Independence Day. I really thought he was going to get one this past weekend. Looking forward to it. He had the opportunity, just couldn't get the ball down. It was bouncing up on his chest. He couldn't get it and just ran out of space. And the keeper, I was so mad. I thought he was going to win one for the Fire late in New England. But yes, would love to see him get one along with Giakoumakis on the field too, right? That would be great. And I think last season in Atlanta, Koutsias did get one along with Giakoumakis. So it would be a nice little Greek celebration there, if you will. But anyway, I wrote the MLS Lord's Prayer. And if you just want to take a moment to kind of clear your mind here, become one with the Chicago Fire in prayer and join me in saying the MLS Lord's Prayer here. Our Father and Commissioner Garber, hallowed be thy game. Thy league has come through franchise expansion in soccer-specific and modified stadiums. Give us this day our daily gam, and forgive us our back passes, as we forgive those who counter-press against us, and lead us not into bad tackles, but deliver us from VAR, in the name of club, country, and community. Amen. And with that, we'll wrap up this week's episode. Thank you so much to Ryan for writing in. Thank you so much to everyone else who continues to support the show by listening, subscribing, sharing, leaving good reviews, even bad reviews, because I learned from those. Thank you to John Donovan, to Skyra Icelandic Spring Water, and as always, let's go Fire.